it is a secondary emotional state, right? It's not a primary emotional state. So anger stems out of something. Either I'm feeling dejected, or I'm feeling disrespected, or I'm feeling vulnerable, or I'm feeling neglected as a therapist. And that's why it incites anger in me, because it's not a primary emotional state. When you're as open about your own emotional states in the therapeutic session with the client feels equally open to communicate his or her emotional states at that point. If you say that, I'll adopt some Zen mode and it wouldn't make me angry at all, that's not possible.
As mental health professionals and psychotherapists, all of us get these queries from clients requesting for free therapy sessions. Sometimes we feel stuck in interventions that we are doing with our client and we are not progressing at the pace or at the pace that we are wanting to work with the client. We might experience frustration and anger often in a therapy setting. Today, we are going to talk about that. Hi, I'm Urvashi Bisht, head psychologist at heyy and a practicing psychotherapist with more than 5 years of experience. Today, we're going to talk about, can therapists get angry in a therapeutic setting? And we have Dr. Mahima Sahi to discuss and enlighten us on the topic from her experience that she's had in the field. Dr. Mahima Sahi comes with 5+ years of work experience in the domain of mental health and a Ph.D. in clinical psychology. She has a strong domain knowledge and over 20+ national and international publications and conference presentation to her credit. She's working as Chief Psychologist at heyy, and we are so glad to have you today with us to discuss and understand how therapists work in the setting. Mahima, thank you for taking our time.
Thank you, Urvashi, for such a warm welcome. I'm equally excited to be part of this.
Great. So as I mentioned, the topic is going to be, we want this to be very conversational rather than making it interview, since both of us are practicing in the field. So maybe we can, add on with our experiences. So the topic, as
Absolutely.
I mentioned, is that how therapists or can therapists get angry in a therapeutic setting, because we are expected to play a certain role in a therapy setting, right? So something that you'd like to add to that, how you understand that statement.
Interesting. First of all, I really like the part that we are now focusing on therapists for a change rather than the normal audience,
Right.
because I think that's also an area which is not looked upon as frequently. When it comes to, can we get angry? Of course, we can get angry. We are human beings before we are professionals. But is it healthy to get angry in a professional setting? That may not be true. Like, it may not be appropriate to get angry in a professional setting where we may have our ways of giving it an outlet. But whether we get angry, of course, we get angry because it's a normal human reaction. Right. And I think everybody has that as the primary instinct when it comes to responding to a particular situation. So I think it's absolutely normal, but completely controllable. Otherwise, of course, it can have a damaging impact in the session. So yeah.
Right. So you talked about, anger being a very normal or instinctive reaction to things. We can, as therapists or as individuals, can get angry otherwise. But you mentioned that it
Sure.
might not be healthy to do it in a therapy setting. And there are multiple
Right.
situations that provoke us sometimes. When we feel stuck with the client and we are not making progress. Or sometimes
Yeah.
certain things that the client responds or react to because they're emotionally vulnerable and we feel angry. Can
Right.
we respond? Can we express that anger at that time, or can we not? Or, what do you suggest? Can we be
Uh,
here in a setting?
yeah. I think expressing it can have like different connotations in a therapeutic setting. For instance, if I'm handling a case and there is somebody who's provocative in nature, or if it, insinuates my anger in that situation, like I said, it's a normal reaction, anger primarily, but it is a secondary emotional state, right? It's not a primary emotional state. So anger stems out of something. Either I'm feeling dejected, or I'm feeling disrespected, or I'm feeling vulnerable, or I'm feeling neglected as a therapist. And that's why it incites anger in me, because it's not a primary emotional state. So if it's stemming out of somewhere, I just need to figure out where it's stemming out from and whether I'm allowed to express it in the session. Of course, I am. but not explicitly, like outwardly towards the client, but being very transparent that, had I been XYZ, it would have made me angry. As simple as that. I think maintaining that sort of transparency also incites an openness to communication. When you're as open about your own emotional states in the therapeutic session with the client feels equally open to communicate his or her emotional states at that point. If you say that, I'll adopt some Zen mode and it wouldn't make me angry at all, that's not possible. If I get angry as a therapist and, explicitly stating it out that, you're making me really angry and it's getting on my nerves, then for sure it can actually spoil your rapport between you and your client. And it can cause a hindrance in the sense that be judged at that point. And it may also even amount to, in some instances, a sort of counter transference, because we are talking in the professional lingo, then I may use this term, where I'm sure we, like both of us are practicing psychologists. So we understand from our experience that when people visit us, they are so vulnerable and they are not at their best. So giving them that benefit of doubt, we have to consider that they are not at their best and they may not have insight into what they are saying at the moment, and some things that we may need to neglect within the session. But if there is something that the client can learn from, and if you can say it out loud to the client in a way that's not very apprehensive for them, then it may even benefit them.
So, from your experience, has there been an incident where you managed to express or talk about how you're feeling in terms of anger with your clients?
Yeah, I think so. It has been a while since I've practiced, but back in National Health Mission, when I was practicing very early on in my career, there were a few instances with adult cases of substance de-addiction and rehab. Rehab is a discipline which requires too much patience as a therapist. And you really, sometimes clients really test your patience to the T. So there was this one case where a person was addicted to multiple substances and was there for rehab. And after the 21 days of intoxication procedure, physically, when the drug was outside his body, and we were kind of extending him support and trying so that, the treatment sustains and he's well after. On the very 22nd day, I think he consumed the drug again. So it brought the treatment to ground zero. And I wasn't aware that, he consumed the drug. So, and he kept on saying that, I haven't consumed it. I haven't consumed it until we got a blood test and, a urine analysis. And we got to know that he has actually consumed the drug. That really, for a heat of the moment, like insinuated anger in me that, all my efforts got wasted after so many days of giving him support and therapy. But then I think it was heat of the moment. Like I said, I did communicate it to him that, if you were me or if I were you, we can have role reversals and imagine how it would feel like. And he really did understand. It was so very effective. I think that was the only time he consumed the drug, and there was no episode after. And it was his 19th relapse. So he had done it 19 times previously, but that was his last one. So I felt very good after that. But it does work. Like maintaining transparency with your client to an extent where it's not damaging for them. I think it's the most effective thing that you can do in a therapy session. Just maintaining the thin line of not having too much self-disclosure and not letting it go towards counter-transference, if at all that is a route it can take. Just that, I think it works really, really well. At least in my experience, it has worked very well.
So, something that you mentioned, I think that brings us to the second question that I wanted to know from you is what are the effective ways how us as professionals, independent individual can manage if I am experiencing. So, how can I effectively manage? Because there has to be a healthy way of expressing it. There has to be a line. So, as an
Yeah.
individual, how can I regulate it or how can I hold myself back from not crossing that
Hmm.
boundary?
So I think we all learn by the day. The more we experience such instances within the sessions, the more tamed we become to kind of control our reactions. And like I said, it's an ideal case scenario to say that I'll adopt a Zen mode and not have any reaction towards my client. Just remembering that you are human, but also remembering that the other person is not at their best when they are coming up to you. And because they are on the receiving end and they are seeking help, we need to be the calmer ones out of the two, if not the calmest, like I said. So if we have that understanding. And another thing, I think all of us are primarily very, this is ingrained within us when we are trying to learn the discipline, that you need to have a response inhibition, like we say technically, right?
Yeah.
We need to inhibit our primary response, whatsoever it is. I think most of us, nothing to do with anger primarily. Sometimes it's very provocative in other instances where we also try to subdue other emotional states. And it's not our primary reaction. Even when we are taking histories, something can be very insinuating. We've had our bad day, and somebody comes up and they've had a worse day, and it puts us in a bad spot. So all of us have those moments. So not even anger, all heightened emotional states like we subdue. I think anger is just one of them. But like I said, it is difficult because it's a secondary emotional state. It stems out of somewhere. If you kind of associate in your thought process that, this is a emotional state that is stemming out of my feeling of being dejected or feeling disrespected or hurtful from that person. This is where my emotion is stemming from. I think that cognitive reworking can really help you in that situation to at least subdue your emotional reaction.
To conclude today's conversation, this one, I think, personal statement that I hear often, like, as a psychotherapist, how can you get angry? Or how can you react like this? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who hears that from people around us when we are practicing in this field, right? How do we respond? How do we deal with it? Does it trigger us? What is your take on this statement? Because I'm sure that you've also heard it often from people around you.
Sure. I think we hear it all the time that, how can you, not only within a session, I think even outside, if we are having bad days, how can you have a bad day? You're a therapist, you need to know your emotions the best and manage it even better and all of that. But I think my response to it will only be that if I am to talk about myself, I am Mahima and I am a psychologist. But I am Mahima first and then I am a psychologist. So I am a human being, right? And I have every right of getting angry, sad, frustrated, irritated, and every other intense emotional state that you can think of. But because I'm a psychologist, I will know better ways of regulating it than you. That's what I'm learning with practice.
Right.
Not that I will not get angry, because like I said, I am a human being first and then I'm a professional. So that's all I would want to say.
As I hear, I think it's also a good opportunity for us to psychoeducate people around us. Yes?
Yeah, exactly. We just need to psychoeducate them, bring about that awareness in them, which can bring them to an understanding. Rationality always overpowers irrational thinking, just like how we bring about that rationality with them. So I think that can help.
That sounds like a great note to conclude our conversation today, because that's what heyy is aiming to do: spread more awareness, psychoeducate people around different issues. And as you mentioned, yes, for a change, today we talked to a professional about a professional issue that they experience, mental health professionals experience, because usually we are always talking about the audience in general and what kind of issues they face. And yes, I think looking forward to more interactions with more professionals that we can add on to our platform and highlight this for people.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.